Hello everyone, welcome back. I've got 3 weapons here, and today we're going to talk about which of these is the most powerful. Okay, and by powerful I mean having the ability to control the most amount of people. Okay, and if you guessed the AR-15, you'd actually be wrong. If you guessed the sword, you would actually be correct. Okay, and the reason is because the sword. Okay. And mind you, in the age of swords, basically, we did not have, AR-15s yet. In the age of swords, it takes a minimum of 6 months to turn somebody into a semi-competent swordsman. Okay, in most cases, it would take more than 2 years to turn somebody into a competent swordsman. Okay, and for that reason, like farmers and common people, were not typically trained in swordsmanship, and in many cases it was illegal for them to own swords. Just to give you an example, if I were to hand this sword to somebody that doesn't know how to use it, they would probably swing that first shot, like a baseball bat, okay, and then after that they would go numb, okay. They would start throwing really light shots. They're not going to know how to swing their hips into one shot, swing their hips into the next shot. They're not going to understand things such as misdirections. Like, for example, if I want to hit you down here, I'm going to threaten up here and then come down to the leg, okay? Or I'm going to go low and then come high. And then furthermore, the sword was typically used with a shield, okay? And, in swordsmanship, the shield always stays in front of you, all right? And basically, I am attacking around the shield, okay? So the shield always stays in front of you as you're attacking. If I were to give this sword and shield combination to somebody that has not been trained, what they are typically going to do is that. Okay, they're going to open themselves up, and somebody that's trained is basically going to, as soon as they open up, is going to keep the sword in front of them and just cut right down the middle. Okay. So I train competitively with swords. When I train, I use these. We use these wooden simulators. These are made out of wood, but they have this steel basket over here, and basically this is weighed. The weight of this is similar to that sword, and this basket acts as a counterbalance, because basically the sword has a pommel here, and that's what allows me to rotate my shots, to go from one side to the next to the next. It has a balance point right about there because of that pommel, and that allows me to turn the sword over. Okay, using this method, it's also very efficient. Okay, if I were to give this, relatively like 3-pound sword to somebody, and they would start swinging at me, what would happen is they would get tired very quickly. Okay, on the other hand, me, I'm using very efficient motions. I'm using the energy of the sword, to power my blows. So I'm going to get less tired. Okay, and basically, regardless of how strong somebody is, how big they are, if they have not been trained in swordsmanship, okay, and I would give them a sword and a shield, and I would have them fight, let's say, somebody like me who trains competitively, basically I would kill them, okay, regardless of their size. And that's, that shouldn't be too hard to understand, because, for example, if you take somebody that doesn't box and you put them into a ring against a professional boxer, you would expect that the boxer is going to beat them up. Okay, so that's a a normal thing. That's that. So the same thing goes with the sword. Somebody like me that's been doing this for 15 years, if somebody were to face off against me, they're going to lose. Okay. Now the reason why this is significant. Let's put this on the side for a second, okay, because I train people in swordsmanship. I train people in guns. Okay. Let's put the sword aside for a second, and let's take the musket. Okay. This is a flintlock musket, similar to the one that was used during the American Revolution. Okay, this is a rifled flintlock musket. And within about 2 hours, I can train somebody to use this, and I often do. Okay, after 2 hours of training, okay, I would not dare get into a duel with that person. Okay, a duel, like, let's stand 50 feet apart. We're each going to sit here, take it, aim, fire at each other. That person would have just as good of a chance of killing me as I would of them. Okay, so with the sword, I have no fear. Okay, regardless of if I train you for 2 hours or even for 2 days, I'm still going to kill you because it takes more than 6 months of training for somebody to become competent with a sword. With the musket, it takes about 2 hours, okay? And with the AR-15, which I train people regularly, it probably takes about 15 minutes, okay, or less, okay? With 10, 15 minutes of training, I would not dare get into a duel with you. I would not agree to a duel because, again, you have just as much of a chance as killing me with the AR-15 as I would have of killing you, okay? And this is very significant to liberty, okay? Because at the time of the American Revolution, we had passed from the age of swords, into the age of muskets. Okay, now muskets did exist prior to that, but they were more expensive, a lot more expensive. They had these wheel-lock muskets. They had a wheel-lock action as opposed to the flintlock, and they were too expensive for the common people to own. But when the flintlock came along, the musket became a lot cheaper, and now all the farmers in the Americas could own these. Okay. And the significance is that around the time of the American Revolution, the people had arms equal to the government that ruled over them. Okay, and for that reason, democracy took hold in America when it did. Okay, there was prior attempts at democracy, let's say in ancient Athens, in Venice, there were prior attempts at democracy, but it didn't last long because the people were always at a disadvantage. At the time of the American Revolution, that gap had, once we passed from the age of swords to the age of muskets, and the people and the government have the same guns, all of a sudden we have liberty, we have democracy, we have the republic. Okay. Now from that point forward, okay, things started changing because basically as technology continued to advance and become more expensive, that's exactly where we, just like prior to the flintlock musket, we had a situation where guns were too expensive for the common people. Well, once we get past 1850s, once we get past 1900, the weapons again become more expensive than what the common people can afford. Now the government's got tanks, they got airplanes, they got battleships, and now the advantage starts going back to the rulers, right, to the governments, and for that reason we can see that the people have been consistently losing their freedoms, losing their liberties. Okay, now we're at the point where all we have is this. The good thing is that we have a lot of these, and there are a lot of us, and that's really the only thing that the government respects. Okay. If it wasn't for these guys here, we would have absolutely no liberty, no liberty left. Now, people will say, well, the government still has those ships and those airplanes and those missiles. But here's the thing: those weapons, they cannot use them effectively, against us without, killing themselves, without killing their own families, and basically, killing themselves in the process. So that's why the AR-15, AK-47, semi-automatic rifles and handguns, why they are so significant and essential to liberty and freedom, or the continuation of liberty and freedom. It is the only thing that keeps the government respectful or fearful, okay? Because basically, people generally only respect that which they fear, and that also applies to government. Government only respects that which it fears. As long as we have these, and the government fears us, we will retain some liberty. If we lose these, then there's absolutely no reason why the government would allow us to be free. Okay, there's just no reason for it. Okay? We can expect that we will go back to a slave society. And slavery comes in many different forms. I mean, basically you had like serfdom in Europe, where basically the peasants were tied to the land. I mean, they weren't slaves in the sense that they would be bought and sold, but they were slaves in the sense that basically they worked for the landlord, right, the baron, the land baron, and you know, he more or less took everything from them. You know, he just basically just gave them enough to live on. And you know, in modern days today, basically the government would basically just tax everything away from us, and just leave us with just enough food to live on. Okay, so that would be the form that a modern day slavery would take. Okay, but thanks for watching. Post some comments. Let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you guys again soon.